with Joey Vera of Armored Saint. How are you, Joey?
I'm doing well. I hope everyone else is okay out there, yourself included. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I suppose that's how all of these conversations have to start these days is how are you doing? So, how are you guys doing?
We're good. Like we're dealing with life as most of us are in this whole world. Just luckily, at least in my circle, everyone's here is healthy and dealing is okay with everything so far. And so that's good. And the rest of the guys in the band are good. We're just, like I said, we're just trying to move forward and be creative and continue to try to be somewhat normal during this time. And yeah, we're hanging in there.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. And you've got a new album that's coming out. This is a hell of a time to have to promote a new album. How is this impacting the plans you maybe had in line for that before all of this happened?
Well, the everything is kind of business as usual as far as the just the record release part of it, uh, not being able to do let's say like a record release live gig or something like that. But um, we everything else is just moving forward like normal. We did talk about, you know, because we were putting this on the schedule, it was right around April or May, and we said, well, should we hold it? Like wait and
Mm.
see what happens with the world. But even us in the label were kind of like, well, why wait? Like what are we waiting for? I mean, maybe more than ever because people are sort of locked in. Maybe more than ever, this is a better time to release it. People just want to feel some sense of normalcy, and they want, and if you're a music fan, a new record from one of your favorite bands is the perfect thing. So people are genuinely seemed excited that we have a new record coming out, regardless of what's happening in the world. Maybe because of what's happening in the world, I don't know. So we didn't really have any touring planned for it, so it's not like we really lost out on that aspect of it. But just the fact that we can't play is a bummer. So we are remedying that by, maybe we were going to talk about this or not, but we the idea came to us to do one of these sort of virtual live streaming shows. At first, we thought it was a terrible idea. The idea of going into a venue with no fans allowed and playing on stage and pretending like you're playing live seemed very odd and awkward to us. But the more we thought about it and the more it became to realize, like, this ain't going to change in the near future. So it's either you do something like this or you do absolutely nothing. And the thought of doing nothing to us really scared us. We didn't want to do that either. We have this record coming out. We want people to be pumped up, and we're excited about it. So we said, you know what? Let's just do this. It's going to be different and weird, but let's think positive, and it's going to be fun. So we're doing this show. It's October 10th. It's when the live stream starts, and it runs for a whole month. You can watch it from October 10th all the way to November 8th. We're playing in an empty venue, but we got a bunch of cameras and sound and stuff, and fans can come watch us play on stage. It's only $10 to get in, and we're playing a full set. We're playing 4 brand new songs from the record, and we're just gonna have fun with it. So if anyone's interested, they can go to Armored Saint. That's one word, armoredsaint.veeps.com, and we hope people will join us, and it's going to be fun. We're going to answer questions and stuff from fans that are submitting things they want to know from us. And it's a strange new world at this point. Hopefully it gets back to normal at some point in the future. So for now, this is what we're doing.
Well, I think it is exciting. You can count me amongst the people who are excited to get a new album from a favorite band, and my ability to go out to shows and be out till 2 a.m. is very limited, even in the best of times.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of places we've actually never played. There's a lot of, or maybe if we've played near a place, like even in the United States, let's say, forget it, never mind the world. There's a lot of places we haven't played in the world, but in all the times we've toured the United States, some people are like, why don't you ever come up to Vermont, or why don't you ever come up to Delaware or something, or you never play near Montana or something. Look, that's true. There's a lot of times tours just don't go to certain areas, and so for this way, people, doesn't matter where you live, you can come in and watch us. We're going to be rocking out like normal, and this is the closest thing we're going to get to making that happen. So here's an opportunity.
Well, before we talk more about the new album, one reason I was pretty excited to talk to you was just a personal memory I have about getting exposed to Armored Saint in the late 80s, I guess it must have been. And I totally misunderstood you. So basically, the story, it's hard for young people to understand, I think, what it was like to go to a record store and not really know what you're looking at. You
Yeah.
either had money for a magazine that would tell you about a band, or
Hmm.
you could take that same money and roll the dice with something that had a cool album cover and looked maybe kind of promising.
Exactly.
So Armored Saint was definitely in that category of I don't know anything about this, but holy shit, look at this! There's fucking knights on the cover here. Like
Yeah.
this is absolutely for me. Got it, loved it, but I honestly don't know for how many years. I just thought you were a British band. you know?
Well, I mean, that makes sense because you were talking about March of the Saint, the first record.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, at that point, well, still at this point, I mean, we are heavily influenced by British bands, especially the new wave of British heavy metal. When that was one of the big things that really kicked us in the ass. Um, but yeah, it makes sense. We were very much influenced by anything UK related or European related. So, the fact that we named our band Armored Saint was part of that. Um, we were way into Excalibur, the movie, and we just wanted to go play Donington Festival. That's like our dream, or the Marquee Club in London.
Oh yeah.
So it makes sense that would come across that we seemed like we were British.
Yeah, it did. And then I was shocked to find out LA. And then I thought, right, actually, can you deliver? Seduce? Like some of those other tracks started clicking. I was like, oh, of course.
Right.
There's a Southern California thing going on.
Yeah.
Again, I honestly thought it was Brits imitating that sound. But what was it like for you trying to work in that scene really in its heyday when, you were bringing something distinctly different to the scene?
Well, it was pretty fun. Especially being in LA, we were, you know, part of this new metal scene that was emerging. And we were just there. We were one of the younger bands that was coming up that got signed in late '83. So we, we were stoked. I mean, we were just part of this new scene, and what we were trying to do in LA was we were trying to bring some of that stuff that we were reading in Kerrang magazine about, the bands that were playing the Marquee Club and stuff like that in London at the time. We were trying to make that happen in LA. So we were one of the first bands that were more the sort of the denim leather bands than anyone else. There was a small handful of other bands that were akin to us too, but we were dealing with like the bands that were already getting bigger, but were more glam oriented, even Wasp and Black and Blue and Malice. You know, there were some other bands too, Rat, of course. And we were playing with those bands, but we were way more denim and leather, way more influenced by Saxon and Def Leppard and Motorhead, you know. So that's what we were trying to bring to the scene in the city, and we feel like we were definitely part of that first wave, and it was pretty exciting. I mean, it's also strange to look back though, because at the time, like, I don't know if I really appreciated it, like it was just normal. It just seemed like, well, it should be like this, you had no idea that at some point, like, you know, it would turn into the Poisons and the Guns N' Roses that would just like explode beyond, even though I wouldn't call that heavy metal, but it came out of the heavy metal scene. Um, and it almost got to the point where heavy metal got too big, and we had no idea it was going to go that way in 1982 and 83. You couldn't even conceive of that. But it was cool. When I look back on it, I look back, with a fond memory. It was pretty wild, and we felt like we were part of that Wild West, and it was cool. It was fun.
Was there ever a moment, just in private where, yeah, I guess I'm wondering, like, how intentional was your positioning as the denim and leather band? Was there ever a moment in the practice space where, like, you know what, let's see how we look in eye makeup and spandex. Maybe that's something we should try.
No, it was never that, but that kind of conversation is kind of what led us into wearing armor in our first 3 or 4 years of existence. Because when we first came out on the scene, we were basically we just were reproducing what what we were looking at from bands like Saxon and Iron Maiden, and next thing you know, there's other bands coming up doing the exact same thing. So suddenly you're playing with other bands that, you know you guys we basically kind of sounded the same, and then we also kind of looked the same, and so we sort of felt like, well, we were also really into theatrics, and we were into bands that were very entertainment oriented. Bands like Kiss was a huge influence on all of us from the 75 until, you know Kiss Alive 2, I would say. And then bands like Alice Cooper, David Bowie. We were really into a lot of different kinds of bands and music, and the whole spectacle part of it was something that we also really liked. So we said, well, we have this cool name for our band. Maybe we should be exploiting this kind of this sort of vision or this image that it kind of could conjure. So, we were also at the time very much into the Road Warrior, the first Road Warrior movie.
Oh yeah.
And so those things kind of came at a perfect, you know, planets came at the same time. And then we said, let's do something different. Let's try to separate ourselves from the pack, and let's go for this kind of post-apocalyptic armored, slash, road warrior thing. And that's where the armor came from. And so that was the moment we took that step, and we said, let's try to be different from everyone else. And and it worked at first. I mean, I thought that it was a really cool thing, and people really dug it, and it did separate us and made us a little bit different than everyone else. But that came back to bite us in the ass a little bit later, when the genres began to splinter, and you started to see subgenres come in to the scene that were not really there before, thrash metal being one. um, then you could say, I don't even know if power metal was a thing in the early 80s. I think that came later. But then you had the glam metal scene, which was clear. And so we kind of found ourselves at times struggling. And I'm talking like once we were already signed and we were touring around the States and being on tour with different kinds of bands and stuff, we found some audience members sort of like, nah, I don't know. They look, I don't like the costumes. Aren't I don't get in the costumes. I'm really into the t-shirts and the denim vests from bands like, you know, Slayer and Metallica and Anthrax or whatever. I'm not getting this whole dressing up in a costume thing. I don't care what your music sounds like. You guys, I'm not getting the image. So it took us till about 1997 to finally go, all right, enough of this. Um, is it kind of got in the way, and the most important thing to us the whole time was the music anyway. So we said, the music is the only thing that matters to us. let's drop this whole armored thing and just be a band. And so we went back to just being ourselves.
I think it's really interesting that you experienced the emergence of subgenres and what that did in terms of audience tastes and markets for live tours and things like that. One of the aspects of Armored Saint and a lot of the bands of that era that I don't see a lot of now is a diversity in terms of the lyrical themes or imagery that you've got. So, for Armored Saint or a lot of, Def Leppard for that matter, a lot of early metal bands that have a song about sex, that have a song about politics, that have a song about fighting dragons, and it didn't seem like they needed to specialize and just be a political band or just be a dragon fighting fantasy sort of band. Um, did you? How do you feel about that narrowing of themes that seem to have occurred sometime, I don't know, around the emergence of thrash, where there wasn't this wide diversity that you got in the new wave of British heavy metal bands?
Well, it's an interesting point to bring up because it's kind of part of our story that of how we've evolved. And we, at the time, in the beginning, we just, like I said, we just wanted to be a European British influenced band. But along the way, we were always into different kinds of music. And part of the bands that we also were influenced by were even earlier than the new wave of British heavy metal. So we're talking about like bands like UFO, bands like Queen, Thin Lizzy, let alone other kinds of music like R&B, for instance. So we slowly began putting in different influences into what we were writing and doing. Um, Now, once the splinter started happening of these subgenres, it kind of came out of nowhere, and you sort of felt yourself like I touched on this a second ago, where you were sort of not you were turning some people off and turning some people on, but also some people weren't getting it, and so we sort of felt ourselves swaying between the genres. We could hang with the thrashers and we could hang with the hair bands. We could do both, but we never really fit in with one or the other 100%. We kind of had started drifting towards the center. And believe it or not, around 1987, the later part of our chrysalis years, they began to weigh on us. And I think we started to feel this sort of sense of like, of an insecurity and just an unsure. We were starting to become unsure about who we were, a little bit of an identity crisis. And I think it started to affect the way that we wrote music. We started to overthink things and we started to overanalyze songwriting and themes and stuff. And in my opinion, anyway, a lot of people disagree with me, but I think that it started to hurt the music. And, um, this thing sort of bugged us for a long time. And it really wasn't until I would say right around 2009 when I was writing for La Raza that I was looking around at our career and saying, the whole time we've always sort of done our own thing. We've kind of been on our own island. And why was that ever a problem? I mean, this is something that we should relish. And this is what we really wanted to do in the first place. We just maybe we weren't assured of ourselves enough, or we were getting pressure from the record label and management to be, you know, focus on one thing only kind of a thing. I don't really remember what was fueling this kind of insecurity, but this is the big step we took right around 2009. And I said, we're on our own island and we should be exploiting this. This is what we want to do. This is what we've always wanted to do. So we suddenly had this sense of like this big this pressure relief taken off of our shoulders, and it allowed us to be, I think, able to be a more of an honest band and write more music that we really want to write, and appreciate and show the things that I think that we do well, and some of the things you know that we want to do, take chances. Let's bring in some R&B flavor here and there. We love it. Why not? Let's try it. We might fall on our flat on our faces, but we might succeed at it too. So um, this is the place that we've become. This is where we're at now. So I think in a roundabout way, I'm answering your question. But
Oh yeah, and I think how much of this is also the story of you growing into the role of a producer and engineer. Struggling with these issues of the nuances of sound and positioning the band in this way or that way, or carving out your own island.
well, I guess that's part of it's a big part of it, and I'm not afraid. I mean, I'm a little bit humble. I don't really like to toot my own horn very much, but it is part of. I am a big part of that. I'm the guy who is waving the flag and the battle cry, and I'm saying, guys, come with. I, this is trust me. Just trust me on this. We're gonna write some great music, and it's gonna be it's gonna showcase one of the best singers in the whole industry right now, which is John Bush, and he's in our band. Like, come with me. It's gonna be awesome, and we're just gonna write great songs and great music, and just come with me. I have a vision, and the vision pays total respect to what Armored Saint is and or was, and I'm never going to tarnish it. It's only going to make it even more special. Trust me. Just come with me, and it's going to be great. And so I'm lucky that the guys in the band trust me in that sense. I mean, we all work in a collaborative way, but at the end of the day, somebody has to be the director or leader or you know, producer, you know what I mean, or
Mhm.
manager. And I've taken it upon myself to be that person. I think that I'm pretty decent at doing it. I'm not perfect. I make tons of mistakes all the time, but I'm willing to be open enough to see the big picture. And it's a growing process. I'm learning stuff every time we put out a new record. Um, and here we are now. This is just another snapshot of where we are mentally, and this is a snapshot of where we are at this point in our career. And I don't know. I'm hoping that the fans and everybody connects and understands it. I think that for the most part they do. Um, and we're super lucky to have all those people that are coming along with us, the fans and everybody. So we feel that we're in a good place right now.
I think that's incredibly humble given the audible results. But for a lot of fans, especially fans who are maybe thinking about getting into record production or doing it for themselves at home, the shame is that you don't hear all of the stuff that got deleted. You don't hear all of those learning moments because, why would you put them out?
Yeah.
So is there any kind of, uh, and you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but is there any kind of huge mistake you remember learning from?
um, let's see. I don't know. I mean, not really a huge one. Not like one, like not a monumental moment. Let's say. I mean, there's plenty of things, you know, that have sort of gone wrong, or maybe we made wrong decision wise along the way. I mean, our band has evolved. We've been around a long time. And I've known John and Gonzo since we were in the third grade. So our history is so deep. It goes so back. It goes back so far. It's very hard to work with people that you have are basically family to you. It can be very difficult, but it can also be very rewarding too. So we cherish that we have the same members that we have had for a very long time. Now, when we were younger, we didn't know a whole lot about anything. And to be honest with you, we didn't really fucking care, to be honest with you. Didn't care about the industry, didn't care about business, didn't care about how anything worked, didn't care about having any control over your own destiny and your own business life or anything. We just sort of thought, that's what managers are for. That's what the label's for. I don't need to think about that. That was probably a mistake. But
Yeah.
I think younger kids now are much more savvy than we were when we were 18 and 19 years old. So that was a mistake we had to learn the hard way. We probably lost a lot of ground. We never got to go and tour Europe until we were off of our major label, which was a travesty, and that really hurt us. And we probably could have fought harder to make that happen, but we kind of, let the management and label, tell us otherwise. They'd say, "Oh, it's too expensive. You're not going to get anything out of it." We were like, "What? We need to go tour Europe. Like, we've been Kerrang magazine. Look, it's happening over there." And they're like, "Nope." And so that hurt us. You know, and like I touched on before, maybe we let outside influences get to us while we were making the record Raising Fear. And even though a lot of people love that record, it's a strange record for me personally. I feel like we were a little bit confused during that time. So I just feel like nothing really monumental would be a mistake. Um, it's a lot of little things, and everyone's gonna make them. I mean, that's the beauty of life is this is how you learn. You don't come out of the gates like with all your ducks in a row all the time. You have to stumble and you have to get up and you have to get over those hurdles and learn from them, and you got to be willing to take it on the chin every now and then. And I think that's the thing that will make you a better everything, better songwriter, a better writer, a better musician, a better person, better father, a better husband. All those things and combined. This is the only way you can get through life is to try to do better next time.
Sounds like a bumper sticker worthy of a car right there. Uh, so let's turn to the new album, and I've only heard the the single so far,
Yeah,
uh, "End of the Attention Span,"
yeah.
and one of the things that I'm pleased to hear on this, and gosh, as far as I can tell, like literally every Armored Saint album is uh, part of your subliminal appeal is these big backing vocals.
Hmm.
I think of course, the music performances, the shredding, all of it is good, but there's something to me super satisfying about the way backing vocals are done across the Armored Saint catalog. And so my first question about making this new album is just about that kind of consistency. And if I don't, am I just a weirdo who's the only person who's thought this hard about your backing vocals, or is this something that's on your mind too?
That's cool. Not a lot of people mention that, but I get it because this is superly. It's superly. There's a new word. It's superly intentional. It is something that's conscious from my part, and I've tried to bring in as much vocals as I can. Um, Maybe it's my love for Queen, I guess, coming through. It was certainly not. Again, we're not attempting to be Queen by any means here, but influence, sure. I mean, I see backing vocals as another instrument, another part of that sort of orchestra that has their own part that can play a part in moving a song forward. So that's very much intentional, doing that. And I feel like in the last three records, we've had more of that than we've ever had in our career. Not just limiting the backing vocals to sort of shouts or harmony parts on certain sections. Like I've been trying to orchestrate parts that are integral into the chord changes in a section, let's say. So this is something that's very much a conscious decision. I'm glad you pointed out because I'm pretty proud of it. I'm proud of it being part of the song and part of the instrumentation. Um, and you know, all of our records, that I think when I look back at each of our records, each one is a little bit different than the one that came before it. And this is another part of me accepting that fact. I never want to make the same record twice. So this record is no exception. I feel like we went even further and took some other chances on this record than we did on Win Hands Down. But by the same token, I I want to have some things in the music and in the sort of oral landscape that reminds people of of our band, and where we maybe some of that reminds them of a past song they heard or something like that. But I'd also want to take a move it forward in another direction and show them or showcase, something a little bit different. So for me, like my mentality going into writing new records is kind of always the same. Let's just write, and this sounds really dumb, but let's just write great songs. You know, it's very non-specific. Let's just write great music, great songs. um, I'm always attempting to have great choruses. So is John. This is something that this to the extent of our conversations about writing involves these few topics: great choruses, big hooks. Um, it's got to be epic and huge. So I'm really into lots of overdubs and layering, and the vocals are a big part of that. So I'm glad that I'm glad you noticed that, because it's very much intentional for sure.
And what are these areas that you're exploring now that are the new aspects? I see you've got a pretty big engineering team again on this. With how is that part of your efforts to innovate and move forward?
Well, the engineering part of it is a little more on the technical side, um, with maybe the exception of the very end of Jay Rustin's input. But um, you know, once I'm done with the writing process, I guess real quick, I I make very elaborate demos when we're writing, and
Hmm.
so I will take the song that we're writing and I will play all of the instruments on it, all of everything, all the guitars, bass, everything except vocals. I even put dummy lead tracks on there, program the drums to make it sound like an actual drummer playing, and I spend a lot of time on it, and it's very elaborate. And so at the end of the day, I've got a pretty clear idea about how I want it to be at the very end of the day. So once we get to that stage, we move into the production side of it. And I wanted to bring back the same team that we worked on with Win Hands Down, for the fact that I really loved the way that record went on the production side of things. I loved the people that I worked with, and I loved the end result. And I wanted the same. I wanted the same environment. I don't want the record to sound exactly the same, but I wanted the environment to be the same. So that's why I hired Josh Newell and Bill Matoyer, and and ultimately Jay Rustin, who mixed it in the end. And so I want to work with these people because I trust them, I respect their work, um, and I trust want their opinions, and I want their feedback on everything along the way. I want them to bounce ideas back and forth with me, like, was that a good take? Is that good enough? Or can it be better? Does that sound okay? Could it be better? I mean, I don't have all the answers along the way. So I want people to help me fill in the holes. And all three of these guys bring their game to that. And Jay Rustin, at the end of the mix, when it comes to the mixing stage, I just tell him, look, here's some general, like, make it epic. Like, I'll give him some very vague idea, make it dangerous. But I want to hear his interpretation of what we're doing. And so I'd say 9 out of 10 times he comes back like right on the spot, like, wow, that sounds great. I wouldn't have thought of doing it that way, or, you know, um, and so this is the reason why I chose these people to work with, and it's a really cool collaboration that I owe them a lot to this. They're a big part of the end result.
Yeah, just having an objective ear during the creative process like that, especially when you've been living with it since the pre-production phase,
You know,
maintaining perspective is so difficult.
it really is, and by the end, I mean, I'm so sick of hearing these songs by the end that I'm like, oh my God, I can't even tell anymore. Is it good? I have no idea. I used to like it, but now I'm starting to not like it.
Seems like a good idea 6 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. but and that's why you're like, okay, look, I gotta like, I gotta walk away from this, and so it is a tricky thing, and that's why along the way I'm able to stand back and look at the big picture and say, okay, give me your honest opinion, and I'll listen to it, so.
Well, now I want to turn to dorking out about bass for just a little bit, because one of the things that I'm hearing in the new single is it sounds to me like you've got a different bass tone. On previous albums, I would say you have a very rounded sound, but on this one, I'm hearing, there's more of an aggressive high end clank on there. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. I have been going in that direction for quite some time, actually. I've been pushing that, like, I don't know. I guess I'm in this endless pursuit for the Geddy Lee bass sound. I guess I love Geddy's sound on each record. And but I also want it to be my own too. So I've been pushing those things along the way. But to be geeky for a second, I did do some things different. What I did was I didn't use an amp at all this time.
Mm.
It's 100% direct, and the signal chain it's a little too complicated to
Well, are there multiple
explain.
channels? Are you doing one for the
Yeah,
flank and one for the body?
yeah,
Uh,
it's super divided up. I had an absolute clean sound, which is basically just straight off of the guitar. However, I don't particularly like DI sounds at all. Um, so what I used was a Tech 21 Sans amp, the original Sans amp, the black and yellow driver,
mhm.
and so I am coloring the DI track a little bit, so it's not just totally clean. So it's just kind of a flat signal, though. It's got a little bit of not too much low end in it, certainly not a lot of high end in it, and nothing really happening in the mid range. But it's fairly clean, but it's got no distortion on it. But it sounds like a clean SVT kind of, I guess.
Mhm.
So that's the DI track. Then I run a parallel out of that into another Tech 21 Sans amp, the VT bass driver, and that one has a lot more uh, color controls as far as EQ goes. So that one I'm making a little more ratty, and that one has more low end. It's got some dirt on it. It's kind of like a overdriven, slightly overdriven SVT. And so that one has a lot of body, and it has way more mids, and it's got some more top on it as well. Um, and it's got a little bit of fur, a little bit of distortion on it.
Mhm.
And then there's a third track that's also on a parallel out, and that one is a something I got recently, which is the Dark Glass X7, and that one is super crazy. I mean, that's just got tons of top end, tons of distortion, and it also has this sub distortion that you can blend in, which is independent of the mid range and the top.
Ooh.
It's pretty cool. And so that one is offering, you put them all three together, and it's a pretty trippy thing because you can blend them to make it sound really different for each track. And I think that's what Jay Rustin did, was he would use, depending on how he perceived the rhythm section, he was using one or more of those particular tracks I just described as the driving force for that song. So each one's a little bit different, but that's what you're hearing is you're probably hearing just the certain combinations of all those three elements.
I'm absolutely loving it, and I've always enjoyed. Uh, when I was a kid trying to learn how to play bass, one of the reasons why Armored Saint was in the playlist was like I could just hear it in the mix. I couldn't get a Slayer mix and figure out what this bass was doing. It was just useless to me.
Yeah.
Uh, but then what happened to me, and I'm I'm asking you as a bassist of a certain age who remembers the '90s.
Yeah.
Uh, as soon as I had mastered, just straight 16th notes, and I was thrilled. All of a sudden, there's like Faith No More and Red Hot Chili Peppers and Primus, and there's all this slap bass happening.
Yeah.
And it was so, I can't tell you how many years of my life I wasted learning to cover those stupid slap songs. And never again in my life has that been useful or popular or cool in any, in any arena that I've encountered. Um,
Yeah.
s- uh, so anyway, I'm basically just asking you about the 90s slap bass trend and how you made it through it.
That's hilarious. Well, I got into it. I did get into it, and I play with it all the time. It's for me, it's fun, and so I I've always been into funk and R&B growing up as a kid in the '70s. So some of the influences that I had growing up, even when I was late teen, was Larry Graham, um, Louis Johnson, Verdine White, and Verdine didn't really slap that much, but so those guys had a big impact on the way I play, period. I mean, even still to this day, I carry those influences, you know. A little bit later, I got into Marcus Miller. And so those are the guys that really influenced me in the beginning. And then when I heard Flea, of course, Flea put it in a rock context. And then I thought that was cool as shit, you know. So I we Armored Saint never really did much of that. There was a song called "People" that we wrote, which is uh, it's an unrecorded song we wrote in the late '80s, I think, right around the time I got into Chili Peppers. And that song is clearly influenced by Chili Peppers, and I get to slap a little bit. I wasn't very good at it at the time, but um, anyway, I think that record, I mean, that song appears as in a demo form on Not to the Old School, which came out in 2001.
Oh,
But
really? It was
yeah,
called People?
yeah, I believe it's on Not to the Old School. Yeah, it's a song called People. Um, and that's clearly a Chili Peppers influence song. And also, I got really at the same time I got into John Norwood Fisher from Fishbone, and I'm a huge Fishbone fan ever since. So again, like where we were musically, and Armored Saint broke up in the '90s, so maybe that was a good thing because
Oh, right. That's what saved you from having to
that's
seriously
that's
contend
what
with the
yeah,
trend.
that's exactly what by default it saved my ass from having to like feel the need to keep up with those Joneses there. Uh, but on the side though, I mean, I still practice slapping and I still love it. I'm frankly a little bit like I see it all over Instagram, and it's like sometimes it's annoying. Or if you go to the Nam show or something, and everybody is slapping and popping, and they're all trying to do it faster than the next guy, and it's so non-musical, um, and that bums me out. So I just have fun with it. I like it. It's fun to do, and I still trying to get better at it. And yeah, that's my slap story.
It's starting to sound like you might be gonna put out a funk on R&B album or something in the near future. Are you really thinking about it?
I've definitely toyed with it, just doing something more instrumental. But I don't know if I would go out with a full on R&B R&B record. I mean, John and I both love R&B, and we actually talk about it all the time. Like, we should write an R&B record, you know. But I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's not the right time, you know. Wait till let's get this Armored Saint thing out of our system first.
Well, out of your system, let's wrap up with talking about you're staring down 40 years of doing this. That's a lot to have in your system.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. I feel very honored and humbled and grateful that we've been able to do this for this long. And we've had support from a lot of different people for it to happen. The fans being one of them, our record label being another one, our support systems at home. We're very lucky to be able to make music, and we're lucky that people want to hear music from us 40 years in. Back when we were starting out in the garage, when we were 18, 19 years old, that's all you really wanted. That was success to you, so we feel like we've done it. We're successful. We're doing it. It's pretty cool that we're you know some of us are nearing 60 years old at this point, and it's like, what? And we're still playing in Armored Saint, and people want to hear music from us. That's like, it's just beyond us. So we are so grateful and thankful that we're able to do this. This is this is all we really wanted to do in the first place.
I think it's amazing the way that this has just naturally become old folks music. I, you know, I remember being a teenager and, grown-ups trying to tell all the metal kids, you'll grow out of this, as if we were just going to, turn 30 and suddenly like the Beatles and Bob Dylan. And
Yeah,
meanwhile, we're planning a Motley Crue cover bands in the retirement home in 2040 or something.
yeah, exactly. You know, hey, strange things happen. This is one of them.
Absolutely. Well, Joey, I really appreciate you talking with here on the toilet today. Is there anything else you want to add before we leave you?
You know, I just want to remind people to come check us out in this live stream, and we're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to getting back to playing in front of people, and thank you to all the fans again. Can't thank them enough for supporting us and giving a shit about us. It's we just can't do any of this without you guys. So thank you.